This is PT Pro Talk, the podcast for physical therapists who want to improve their clinical skills and be more successful. I'm Mariana Parks, physical therapist and your host, and today I'll be interviewing Kelly Ziegler to discuss the journey of growing a PT clinic from 0 to 70 locations. Kelly is a graduate of the University of Tennessee and has been with STAR Physical Therapy since 1998. In our discussion today, you are going to learn about the growth of STAR and the challenges faced along the way, including dealing with insurance reimbursements, hiring PTs, and overcoming competition in the field, and also about the future of the PT business. So if you find this interesting, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel, click on the notification bell to stay updated, give us a thumbs up, and share with other clinicians you feel might benefit from this conversation. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. PT Pro Talk is only possible with the support of the forward-looking and innovative companies like Systems for PT, the Do Anything, Anytime EMR. Systems for PT develops systems for clinics so you can focus on your patients. Go to systemsforpt.com to schedule a demo today.
Looking for the highest quality equipment for your clinic? Turn to Fitter First. Our wobble, rocker, and slant boards are all assembled in North America to meet the demands of a busy professional clinic. Designed to adjust in seconds and made from the highest quality materials. Get the best Canadian-made rehab and balance products for your clinic. Order online for your clinic or for your clients. Ground shipping anywhere in North America. Visit fitterone.com. That's FITTER, the numeral 1.com.
Hi Zig, welcome to PT Pro Talk. How are you today?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me, and I understand it's a special day for you.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm happy to have you here today, celebrating my birthday, recording a podcast, so I appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad I can be a part of your birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. So Zig, for the ones that don't know you, your real name is Kelly Ziegler, so we call you Zig. So let's just get started talking a little bit about yourself and your background for the ones that don't know you.
Yeah, sure. I am, I know this is a physical therapy podcast, and I've been in the physical therapy business for well over 30 years. I am not a physical therapist by education. I have a master's in exercise physiology. So back in the day when I first started, I was an athlete and I was looking at either being a coach or a football player, and some injuries occurred. And I was at a place, well, was I going to go get a PhD in biomechanics? And then I ran into some people who had some physical therapy clinics who were looking for exercise physiologists, because at the time in the late 1980s, there was a shortage of physical therapists in Tennessee, especially. There was only one PT school, and they had 32 students at Memphis, University of Tennessee, Memphis. So there was great opportunity for people like me. So I was blessed to come into the profession that way.
Okay, so how did that happen?
It was a new company actually based out of the Nashville area, and they were looking to create industrial rehab programs. And I was fortunate enough through my master's program that I worked with industrial engineers and did a lot of human factors engineering, did ergonomics projects. So I did kind of have a background in that. So that fit well. And what they wanted me to do was do functional capacity evaluations, ergonomic assessments, work conditioning programs. And then I also work with athletes doing performance type programs as well.
Awesome. So when did you start working with STAR? So the ones that don't know, STAR is a physical therapy clinic here based in Tennessee. I don't know what else, how many clinics and where all the places that they are today. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, would love to. So back in the mid-1990s, the physical therapy industry was going through a lot of change as far as a lot of companies were buying up other companies. So we worked for a small company called Swanson Sports Training and Physical Therapy. And we had about 5 or 6 clinics around Nashville. And the owners of this company were businessmen. They were not clinicians. So they had the opportunity to sell. And to make a long story short, they wanted to make a profit off of their investment, which they did. And then we got sold about 3 more times in 6 months. And we ended up in the hands of Health South, who at the time was the largest outpatient physical therapy provider, I think, in the world. And we just weren't a big corporate feel. So Reg Swanson, who was the founder of Swanson's, and he loved that name, Swanson Sports Training and Physical Therapy, Reg decided to do something and start STAR, but instead of having business partners, he wanted fellow clinicians and his friends to be part of it. So I was one of the founding partners, and we started STAR in October of 1997. So we're going on year 26 right now.
That's awesome. That's a long, long journey.
It's a long journey. And this is when you're supposed to tell me, well, you don't look that old, Zig.
You look great. Doesn't look like it's been that long. So I assume there were many, many challenges since you first started. So that was my question. So when everything started, what was your thoughts? Like, do you wanted to make it big and grow in different locations? Like what were you thinking at the beginning?
At the beginning, because we had to take out, I was young, I had 2 young children. So at the beginning, I was like, oh crap, what have we done? Because I couldn't have paid up the line of credit what I was due if we weren't successful. So that was my first thought is we have to make this work. My second thought was I did it with people, and not me. Reg brought in people who were clinical, who were like-minded. We were all friends. We all trusted each other. So that gave me a sense of relief that we are going to make this thing work. Initially, we thought, if we did 5 or 10 clinics, that would be a good thing. And that was kind of our original goal. Not that bigger is better, but fast forward, 25, 26 years later, and we have a little bit over 70 locations now.
That is crazy. That's a lot of locations. And they're all in Tennessee, or do you have clinics in other states?
The majority are in Tennessee. So our core business is in Middle Tennessee. We have clinics in West Tennessee and East Tennessee as well, just not as many. And we've recently opened up in North Alabama. So we're in Huntsville, Alabama. And we also have a clinic in Farmington, Arkansas, which is just outside Fayetteville. And we're about ready to open up our second clinic in Arkansas.
That's awesome. And when you started, you were not as many partners. Now you have more partners, right?
Correct. We have added people as we've grown. The one thing about STAR, and I don't know if we'll talk about it later, we found one of the principles is it's about people, and it's about the people who we work with and we do every day. So the people over time who have done well and who have showed the ability to help us grow and to help us manage what we're doing better, then we wanted to bring on people. And part of it's a succession plan. Reg Swanson, who I mentioned earlier, Reg retired about 2 or 3 years ago. And then, I talk about the other old goats, which are me, Leslie Burton, and Hal Henninger. And we've been doing this for a long time. So, we want to have people in place. So when it's our time to step down, that STAR will be in better shape than it has been.
Yeah, absolutely. So how things progress, like you start with the goal of 5 to 10 clinics, and then now you have 70. So how were things going? Like, how those things progressed?
Well, we were fortunate for a couple reasons. One, now on every corner almost you see an outpatient physical therapy clinic. There's a lot of competitors. Back when we first started, it was mainly hospital based. So we were one of the first people in Middle Tennessee who branched out and were going into the small communities and were starting physical therapy clinics. So we had an advantage of being first. And the other thing is that, the original partners, the people that I had mentioned, we had all been practicing in the area for 5 or 10 years prior to starting Star. So we had a lot of relationships, and the relationships with schools. We do a lot of sports medicine outreach with industries. I mentioned doing the FCEs and ergonomics, and with a lot of physicians. And there's still some orthopedic physicians that we started working with 25, 30 years ago that are still really good friends of ours who are still practicing today.
That's very cool. So you start growing primarily in small communities and then growing that way?
Yeah, a lot of it was, our growth plan, we've never put a dot on a map. We've never said, and I know you've been in Springfield some working with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
So we never put Springfield as a dot on the map that said, this is where we're going to open up a clinic. It's about people. And so every place we've gone, we have either had a clinician who has wanted to be in that community and start a clinic, or we have had a school or school system that wants us to do sports medicine outreach. We have had an industry come to us and say, hey, we really want you to help our people out. Or we've had a physician that has told us, hey, I'm going to this community. Have you ever thought about opening up? So our growth has always been very strategic based on relationships, whether it's internal or external.
Yeah, so that was going to be another question I wanted to ask you. Like, what do you look for when you're growing? So it feels like more the other factors were drawing you to that location than you planning specifically to go to certain locations.
Exactly. We've been blessed with opportunity. We don't have plans to go to Brazil. But if you came to me and you said, Zig, I really want to open up a clinic in Brazil, we very well might build around you and do a clinic in Brazil one day. That I know that's kind of a reach outside of Tennessee, but that's how we do it. We find great people, or great people find us, and we build around them.
Yeah.
You want to open up something? You want to open up something in Brazil?
Let's talk about it. Now you gave me a few ideas.
All right.
And I feel like that's the sense of Star. Like you don't feel as much as that big corporation. It's more like relationships that you grow. I feel like I may be biased, but I have that feeling.
Well, and that's what we want it to be. And thank you for saying that. And we'll speak on, I know, two people that you're familiar with. Sandy Murphy in East Nashville. She lives there. She goes to dinner there. She shops there. She does go to a lot of bars there too, which is great marketing for us. But we want people like that who live in a community, who do everything in that community where it means more to them. Up in Springfield, Bethany is from Robertson County. She's from Cross Plains right down the road. So that's her community. So we want it to feel like home when our patients walk in the door.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel like that's a big differentiator for other like big franchises or other big clinics that don't have that much of that sense of?
Yeah,
maybe?
I really hope so. I don't know the game plan and how these other big companies go about opening clinics. So I can't necessarily speak on them, but I can speak on us. And I really hope, that does make us different. It does make it special. It's that we find people who want to be there, and also our core mission and values, which is to serve. And that could mean a lot of things, but we definitely want to serve.
Yeah. And we know there is a lot of other clinics growing in the area, outpatient clinics. And so how do you differentiate yourselves from those clinics? Is there like a specific strategy or just what you just said?
It's like what I said, where I think we want to be different in a way that it feels special walking in the door. we want to serve our customers, which our customers are our patients, our customers are the referral sources, our customers are the communities. So we have made it a point to do community events, to do charity work, to make sure that we're giving back. So we don't, even though we now have 70 clinics, we still want to be looked at as Star East Nashville or Star Springfield and not Star a big company, because each of our clinics will operate, as you know, you've been in some of our clinics, each of them will operate a little bit differently and have a different feel. And we want that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then as you grow, what do you feel like are the biggest challenges that you face over the years growing Star?
There has been a lot. One that we just talked about is when we first started, I told you we were the only people doing the freestanding outpatient clinics. Now there is a lot of competition. So, the competition has made it more difficult. When you look at, the employee pool, it's even though there's more and more physical therapists coming out of school now, there's also a lot that are currently leaving the profession as well. I think COVID had a lot to do with that. So, finding, especially in the more rural areas, finding great people who want to be there. Because when we open up a clinic in Gordonsville, Tennessee, which we have, and we opened it around Brooke McCall, who lives there, grew up there, now Brooke is going to have her second child. So getting people to cover, and going. So having, the more rural we get, it's finding those people. And then the last thing, as far as challenges, and I think anybody in the industry can speak of this, is reimbursement. Insurance companies, they make it more and more difficult. It seems like every month something changes and reimbursement goes down. I tell people, when I first started in this in 1989, and our average charge at the time was $75 a visit. Our average payment per visit was $75 per visit. So we got paid for what we do. Now it's turned into, I don't know, I hate to call it a game, but in a sense, it's turned into a game with the insurance companies on how to bill and how to collect, because they have made it more and more difficult.
Yeah, that's what I was going to also ask you, because we know it's becoming harder and harder. They're looking for any excuse to not reimburse and pay. And I think that's probably very hard, because most of the clinics based on insurance, right? So if you don't have the reimbursement coming, or if they are cutting, I just imagine it becomes harder and harder to have a profitable business that's worth investing and growing and doing all of that. So I think that's something that, as the time passes, I think I don't know how you see the future, but it just feels like it's getting harder and harder.
It is getting harder and harder. And two things that really frustrate me is, one, and I'll speak about you because I know you give good care, and you could give great care and do really good documentation, and an insurance company might find out something that they don't want to pay for. And it's typically not somebody who knows anything about physical therapy, but they just look for things for reasons not to pay. And, the other thing is too, on utilization review and authorizations, is limiting visits and saying so-and-so can only have 6 visits for this. And it's usually somebody who doesn't have a physical therapy background. So you might do an evaluation to say, hey, we want 10 or 12 visits, and I feel like I'll get this person well. And insurance comes back and says, I'm only giving you 6. That's not the best thing for the patient. So that's what makes it challenging and frustrating to me, is people who are non-clinical who are making clinical decisions.
Do you feel there is a way around that? Like, how do you deal with that so that doesn't ruin the business?
You have probably had to write some letters to insurance companies based on denials that this is why I did this. So I mentioned Leslie Burton before. Leslie, if we do the right thing and if we have documented right, Leslie will fight the insurance companies for every dime that they're not paying us if we feel we're justified and right. So I think you have to do that. We have talked to some other companies who just say, if we're not getting paid for it, we're just going to write it off. We're going to forget about it. That's not good for the profession. So I think two things. One is we have to fight for everything that we feel is right. If we do not, the insurance companies will continue to take advantage. And the other thing, there's a lot more traction right now for cash-based programs and cash-based business where you just don't worry about the insurance companies. Now, that's not going to work in every area of town. You have to have the right demographic to be able to do that. But I do think the profession is starting to lean more or at least grow more towards a cash-based kind of business.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like more and more people are willing to pay for?
Yeah, we're finding more and more are, your service model has to change a little bit because, one of the things with the insurance companies, it would be ideal if every PT in America could see every patient one-on-one for an hour. That's what it should be. But because of or because of insurance reimbursement, sometimes you will have double bookings and you will be able to treat and have to treat two patients at one time. That's kind of the only way to make it work more with the insurance companies. So the cash-based model is more of a concierge model where, you have to have people with higher incomes, but you give them the one-on-one care and you say, hey, I'll see you for an hour. It's just going to be me and you. And those people are more willing to pay out of pocket for that.
Mm-hmm. And have a person that's just there to fight insurance. That takes a lot. It's just a full-time job, probably. Just have someone try to fight.
It's
insurance.
A full-time job, and you need somebody who's passionate about it too. And we have that, but we have to do that for the profession.
Yeah. And about the employee situation, do you feel that COVID changed things a little bit? That people are not willing, I guess, I don't know what's the word, to work as much, or they're not as flexible? Like, do you feel that change was already something that you were seeing happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a little bit of both. I think COVID changed a lot of people's views and values of things. And when they weren't working as much, figured, well, maybe I can do something else. And more people started working from home. There's telehealth and, so there's some other options to do. And that was the one really good thing that we learned with COVID is we learned really quickly how to do telehealth, how to do tele-PT. And that was good at the time. Obviously, you want to lay your hands on people. Ideally, you want to see people, in the clinic. But if you can't, we did learn something great from that. So I do think that changed people's perspectives. Somebody shared a study with me recently, and I'm going to get the number wrong, but I think it was somewhere around I don't know how many thousand. I'm going to quote it wrong, but there's multiple thousands of people who are leaving the PT profession every year. So the more new grads we get, we're not adding to the number of PTs working. We're just replacing the people. And I'm not talking about people retiring. I'm talking about young people who are leaving and going to do something else. We've lost people who've gone into sales and who have gone into other things.
Mm-hmm. And why do you feel people leave in general? Like, do you feel it's burnout? Do you feel it's just not passionate, or just the way the business works?
I think check. I think all three things you said are right. Because a busy clinic, you're busy. And you're working all day and a lot. And I know when I was working in clinic a lot, you hear a lot about people's problems and their injuries and how they hurt. And I would come home and my wife would want to talk about something. And if I was in the clinic for 10 hours, I wouldn't want to talk about her problems or her aches and pains because that's what you do all day. And I think some of it is a generational thing that, we hear more about work-life balance. When we started, we were open from 7 to 6 Monday through Friday. And that's just what we did. And not that we all worked 7 to 6 Monday through Friday, but we stayed open. And now more and more people in this generation, and I'm not saying it's bad, it's just different, but are coming out of school already asking during interviews, can I have Friday off? Or can I leave, what are my half days, or what are my days off, or can I do 410s? So I think we've got to find that balance on still being able to serve the patient's needs while figuring out this thing that everybody calls work-life balance, what the physical therapists are.
Yeah, and that's difficult. That's very difficult to balance and still have both and keep everybody happy.
Yes, it is, and that's one of the toughest things we're finding right now is on the staffing side is to be able to meet the needs of our patients and meet the needs of our staff at the same time, and sometimes they don't always intersect.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask about hiring when you're growing. So like when you are in growth mode, like do you have to hire before you grow? Like you're planning on opening a clinic, then you have a lot of people line up. You're always interviewing, or you wait until you have the need and then you hire? Like how does that work?
We always have a need, and we have an HR team with Star. One of our partners is over that, and we are constantly interviewing people. The hardest thing about our profession is that a lot of the hires you make are new grads. So the new grads typically come out of school in May, June, right now. And, some of them get out of school in August, and you can only take the licensing exam, the boards, a couple times a year. So there's a very small window where you do most of your hiring. So I think we have hired already, just with new grads this year, about 15 or 20 new physical therapists, just who are starting now. And we probably still have about 10 open positions. So anybody listening who was in the Nashville area and this is wanting a good PT job, have them call us, okay?
Listen, people, they need help.
Thank you.
And like over COVID, I know that a lot of clinics, they close. I think you stay open pretty much all the time. Not sure how that worked, but how was during that time? I bet that was very, very challenging.
Yeah, that was one of the most difficult times of our careers because, the world changed. And obviously what we do is very personal, very interactive with people, very hands-on. And how do you do that when they say you can't get within 6 feet of somebody or you have to wear a mask? But we had some really tough discussions as owners and managers, and we wanted to stay open for a couple reasons. One, we wanted to serve our patients. We wanted to serve the people who still wanted to come in. And for our employees, people rely on their salary, people rely on their benefits. So we made it a point that we did reduce hours of people, but everybody who was full-time, if they wanted to stay working full-time, we kept them on full-time. Again, where most folks were working 40 hours a week, we knocked that down to 30 or 32 hours a week. So our people were great. They had to sacrifice, they understood, but whether we were profitable or not, we wanted to honor the people who work for us and give them opportunity to still work and still maintain their benefits. That was very important to us.
That's awesome. So that shows the values of the company, as you said, more about people than just thinking, of course, you have to have a balance because you have to stay open and in business, but
right.
Trying to do your best to take care of people, right?
Exactly. And we have the mission to serve, and we have the mission to be great clinically. And, we have a lot of missions. Marty Blair, who's one of our partners, he has a great saying. He says, no margin, no mission. So, we do have to make money to be able to fulfill what we want to do. But during the toughest times of COVID, that wasn't as important because we wanted to make sure that our people were taken care of.
Yeah. And just a question about market strategy that I don't know if you have one, as you're saying, if things are happening. But if you have a clinic that's doing really well, do you think about opening another one in the same area that happened before? Or you just try to increase the space of that clinic or change the location? I know you have leases and all of that. So how does that work if you feel like, oh, this clinic's killing it, let's grow? So how do you go about that?
No, other great questions, and I would say yes, and yes again to kind of what you laid out there. Again, it's going to depend on the community. It's going to depend on the people that we have around. For instance, we'll take Clarksville, Tennessee. Clarksville was probably about our 10th or 12th clinic we opened because we had a therapist who was working in Springfield, but she grew up and her husband grew up in Clarksville. So we approached her. Hey, Clarksville looks like a great place. Do you want to open? She did. We did. We were very successful up there. That clinic pretty quickly went from seeing about 15 to 20 new patients a month to seeing over 100 new patients a month. We couldn't keep up with the volume. We couldn't expand our clinic anymore. So since that time, we have opened up 2 other clinics in Clarksville to be able to serve that community, and we're actually looking at putting a 4th one up there. So it just depends on that. In other clinics and other communities, if we can expand an existing clinic, that's more feasible financially because you have less overhead, less employees if you can expand a clinic. But that's not always possible, as you said, because of leases and other things.
Very interesting. And how do you feel, Zig, about the business of physical therapy today and in the future? What do you think that things are going?
You're supposed to toss me some softballs. You're tossing
It's just
tossing
one
some
after
words.
the other one.
I thought we were friends. I thought you were going to be nice and easy on me. As we said before with reimbursement, it's getting tougher. And it's mainly getting tougher for 2 things we've already talked about. One is reimbursement. We don't get paid for what we do. We have to fight harder and harder to get paid. The skills of the therapist. When I first started 30 years ago, and I look now on the skill of what our therapists do, it's not even close. Clinically, people are so much better now than we were 30 years ago. But it's funny, we don't get paid the same way or as easily as we do. So that doesn't make sense. So, it's harder and harder. And again, like what we talked about before too, is finding the balance between what serves the employees and what serves our patients. We can't, if you ask our employees, a lot of them would say, oh, I want to work from 9 to 2 every day, but patients have to come before and after work. So we need people to work at 7 a.m. We need people to work at 6 p.m. So again, trying to find the balance as the generations continue to change, to me are the 2 biggest challenges we face.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think I have too many difficult questions since you're complaining a little bit. Zig, before I transition to some final questions, more general questions, anything that you want to talk about, everything that we just mentioned to wrap up our discussion?
I can talk about a little bit about physical therapists and how, how maybe I or we look at things. And, one thing I just talked about was clinical excellence, and we want to be clinically excellent. One of the first things that we did when we started STAR, because we were clinician owned, is we wanted to do continuing education different. So we do our own continuing education, which doesn't mean we're the ones who are teaching it. but we brought in, the McKinsey Institute. We brought in Maitland. We bring in the top people, and we'll do 12 to 15 courses a year in Nashville, so our people can get the continuing education they want. And so we've recently started a COMT program. We've recently started a residency program. So we have always wanted to be clinically excellent. At the same time, I still think a lot of physical therapy is from the neck up. That, it's not always the best clinicians who get the best outcomes. You have to connect with the patient. You have to educate the patient. I will brag on you as far as our service model. So without giving away too much, you recently treated my mother-in-law, and she's bragged on you. And two things that really stood out to me, and I know you're good clinically, but she never once mentioned, wow, she's great clinically. She mentioned how nice you were, how well you treated her. And that goes so far. Last week, we were on vacation as our whole family, and my mother-in-law was there. And I saw her rolling up towels to use as lumbar rolls. And when she would sit in chairs by the pool, and I didn't even have to ask her. I knew where she learned that because you educated her and you taught her. And so those kind of things go a long way. And then one day last week, she told me that you had left her a message. And I think you were just checking up on her and how much that meant to her. So, as much as we want to be clinically excellent, it's those other things that make the difference. So by educating patients, by treating them well, treating them respectfully, giving great service, and I don't want anybody to ever say, well, Zig doesn't think clinical excellence is important. It is, but I think those other things are just as important or more important on how you treat your patients. So that's kind of my soapbox and kind of my message. And it just so happened that we were talking a week after I noticed some of these things happen that you were a part of. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you made my birthday a little happier with all these compliments.
Well, good.
And I think that talking about the continuing education that you mentioned before, that's how I found STAR. Because when I moved from Brazil, I had my McKinsey certification, and I was like, well, let's connect with someone that has the same certification. Then I started looking on the website, and I was like, everybody that's McKinsey certified works for STAR. I guess that's what I should look for. That's what I should go, because of the education that you provide. And that's how I first connect with Sandy, emailing people that have the same qualifications, same interests, and talking about things. So I think that was pretty cool, and that you continue to offer these courses. And I participated in one this year. So I think it's very cool.
Well, I'll have to thank the McKinsey Institute for bringing you or helping to bring you our way then.
Yeah. Zig, so transition to our final questions.
Yes.
Any resource of information in particular that you like? I know that you're not a clinician per se and doesn't probably do a lot of the readings and papers and all of that. But if you're looking for some information, do you have any recommendations?
Oh, see, you're throwing another hard one at me. I have never been a reader for pleasure, for research. And obviously when I was getting my master's and doing other things, I had to read and do a lot of research and keep up with things as far as, extra with ergonomics. Honestly, my biggest source of information, I've been very blessed to have great mentors and great coworkers. People that I've mentioned, Reg Swanson, Hal Henninger, Leslie Burton. Reg is an athletic trainer by education. But, I get more of my information and more of what I need from the people. And like I said, from my mentors and from my coworkers than I probably do from any publication or any resource. Now, sometimes they'll steer me away and they'll say, hey, you need to read this, and I will. But honestly, that's where I get it from people that I have a lot of respect for.
Yeah. it's very good to always have a mentor, someone that has more experience that you can turn to and ask some questions and just be in contact. Um, and what would be the best advice you give to clinicians that are starting their careers? Could be new grads, or it could be also clinicians that think about opening a clinic like you did many years ago. Any advice for them?
Yeah, that's a great question for me, because I do a lot of the interviewing with the new grads. I really think two things are important. One is passion. Is you're going to be in your career for a long time. You spend a lot of time with your patients. So, I always, if people ask me about getting into the profession, I want to make sure they're very passionate about it. Are you sure this is what you want to do? It's a big commitment, school-wise, taking your boards, staying up with your continuing education, getting all your CEUs. So passion is one, and the other is patience. Because, and I'm not talking about the patience you see, but having patience. Um, you're not going to be great right out of the gate. It takes time, as you know, to develop a skill set, to be what we call to be great at your craft. And that's why we offer mentorship, and that's why we offer continuing education. But we have found that it usually takes young clinicians 2 or 3 years to really feel like they're really comfortable with what they're doing, because you get a lot of things thrown at you. Physical therapists see everything from head to toe. So you have to be skilled and understand a lot of things. So patience and passion.
Yes, absolutely. And just developing all the other skills that is not just clinically, but like learning how to deal with people, how to communicate. Everyone
Right.
is different. So I was going to ask about the personal qualities and abilities that you think are important to be successful. So I imagine probably those soft skills that you mentioned before, right? Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, because with that, to be a good therapist, you have to have a certain skill set. And that skill set you're going to get in PT school, you're going to get if you pass the boards, you're going to get in continuing education programs. So you have to have a skill set. But to me, the most important thing is, how do you relate with people? How do you talk? How do you interact? How do you serve them? So again, like I said before, I think that is as important or more important than your clinical skill set.
Very good. Zig, if people want to learn more about you or start, or they want to contact you, is there a way they can find you?
Yes, that's easy. We are on the World Wide Web, on the internet. We are www.starpt.com, starpt.com, and it's got all the information on there, and it's got contact information. It has our job openings for anybody who is interested in a job, and we still do have a lot of good ones out there. So yeah, we'd love for people to look at our site and contact us if they need anything.
Awesome. Zig, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing a little bit about your story and all this path to growing a very successful and very nice and special clinic to work with that I really like. So I appreciate your time and you coming here to share all of that with us. Thank you so much.
Well, good. Well, thanks for having me. And again, I'm pleased to be a part of your birthday. So happy birthday again.
Thank you.